Good evening, I'm Chris Bath. Welcome to Blacktown City Council's Budget Forum for 2022. Before we get underway, on behalf of Council, I'd like to acknowledge the Darug people as the original custodians of the land that we're meeting on today. We pay our respects to elders past, present and emerging, and acknowledge Aboriginal people for their custodianship of this land. This was, is and always will be Darug land. Now, we are here in broad terms tonight to talk about Blacktown City Council's budget for the coming 12 months, but also very exciting wider plans for the next 20 years. Then it's over to our esteemed panel here that we've assembled for you to discuss the way forward for Western Sydney as we emerge from COVID-19. But let's introduce the panel to you first, starting with our Mayor, Tony Bleasdale. Mayor, thank you very much for inviting us here tonight.
Thank you, Chris. Well, thank you, Chris. Look, it's great to have you here tonight. And of course, in the great city of Blacktown, it is a wonderful place. I'm really keen to share our plans for the future. And of course, at the same time, I always say we need to get the feedback from the community. And it's the best planning tool that we can possibly have in going forward. So really, we want to hear from all of those on the panel tonight, what we can do to help our communities as we emerge from the shadows of the pandemic. And I think as a city of 410,000 people, I think we're on the right track, but we need to get that feedback.
All right, well, we've got a bit of it coming for you. So next up tonight, joining us on the panel, we have Michelle Zybot. She's the head of the Transport Research Unit at UTS. Michelle, welcome.
Thank you very much.
And also Shivana Kamal, the Youth Team Coordinator at the Blacktown Area Community Centres. Welcome to you, Shivana. On the other side here, we have Paul Campbell, the Deputy Chief Operating Officer at Australian Catholic University. Welcome to you.
Thanks, Chris.
We have Chris Laurie, the Manager of Community Access Western Sydney.
Thank you.
Welcome. And the very fit Bryony Akel. She says that she's not these days, but she's got 4 children. Trust me, she's very, very fit, chasing them around. She's the head coach for the New South Wales Swifts and a great voice for netball at all levels. Welcome to you, Bryony. Now, this is a budget forum, as I said, so let's take a look first at what Council's putting forward this year.
Hello there. It's my privilege to present Blacktown City's draft budget for the coming financial year. I'm also pleased to present Council's blueprint for our city's future, our Blacktown 2041. Our record $809 million balanced budget has been delivered in the wake of 2 years of COVID-19. Throughout that challenging time, Council worked hard to look after our residents, businesses and staff, and we supported our frontline workers and maintained our essential services. This budget and our plans for the future will ensure we can pay the bills, provide the best possible services and transform Blacktown into a safe, sustainable, diverse and prosperous modern city.
Blacktown City is the biggest city by population in New South Wales. More than 403,000 people live in Blacktown City. Our population is predicted to reach 612,000 by 2041. Our city is undergoing enormous growth and development. This budget delivers a major capital works program of $284 million. Our transformational projects head this program. The redeveloped Warwick Lane is filling with tenants and adjoining sites are close to being ready to go to market. The $100 million Blacktown Exercise Sports and Technology Hub in the Blacktown International Sports Park and the $34 million Blacktown Animal Rehoming Centre will both be completed within 12 months. The budget allocates $115 million for significant new works in the Northwest Growth Area, $90 million for land acquisitions and $25 million for roadworks, drainage and open space. $160 million goes to building and maintaining our city's roads, footpaths and bridges. $26 million is allocated to our award-winning Kids Early Learning Childcare Centres. Our libraries will receive nearly $10.5 million. The budget allocates $45 million for our city's new and existing parks, reserves, playgrounds and sporting fields. $23.5 million will go to our 5 leisure centres, the Leo Kelly Blacktown Arts Centre, community centres and recreational facilities. And Council will spend more than $63 million on waste collection and management services.
Our Blacktown 2041 strategic plan, along with a 4-year delivery programme and 10-year resourcing strategy, will guide all of Council's operations. Our Blacktown 2041 outlines how Council will work with residents, community organisations and businesses, ensuring our city's sustainable growth and development for generations to come. The release of our Blacktown 2041 follows extensive community consultation, and this is not a council plan, but a plan for the whole community, shaped by the opinions and feedback provided by the community. As we enter the first year of our new 4-year delivery programme, guided by our Blacktown 2041, I'm confident we will deliver a safe, modern and welcoming multicultural city for our residents and a magnet for sustainable economic growth for our businesses.
The Blacktown City Council draft 2022-23 budget documents, as well as our Blacktown 2041 4-year delivery program and 10-year resourcing strategy, are all available for public comment on Council's website.
Now, what we'd like to do as we kick off with our panel is to look at the impact that COVID had on some of the organisations in the community. So, Paul, let's start with you and ACU. Really tough for universities in COVID, but really tough, especially, I'd imagine, for a new campus.
Yeah, we opened our campus in 2020, so been affected by the pandemic a lot of the time, but we had great support from the community and the council, which was really helpful. As most organisations, we've had our challenges with working through COVID, the in and out of lockdown and that sort of thing, and our staff and students have shown a lot of resilience during that time. And so fortunately we've been able to help our students to continue to progress through their courses. So except for it being a very challenging time, it's turned out to be okay for us. So we're glad to be sort of getting towards the other side.
I bet you are. I bet kids are happy to be back on campus too, rather than doing online learning. Paul, thank you for that. Now, Chris, I know your organisation provides a lot of face-to-face services. COVID must have been incredibly difficult for you, for your staff, for your clients. Are you still feeling the effects of it?
We're primarily a disability service, but we also have a community program providing advocacy and NDIS programs. The community project provides advocacy and support and financial support in kind. We don't have money to give out, but we have lots of goods. So it was really highly affected during COVID. Our disability services were mostly able to continue, mostly because they're individual support for people, support coordination, things like that. But our community program we faced a period of not being able to be open at all when the community centres were all closed down. But thankfully we have a wonderful mayor. I'll give Tony a boost, and Tony was able to get permission for us to stay open so that we could provide a takeaway service. Our funding was affected dramatically during COVID. We use the mutual obligation scheme to work for the dole, most people know it as, to fund a lot of our community work. And during COVID, of course, mutual obligations were scrapped, and our funding ceased with a flick of a pen, and no one really noticed, as did many other community centres. The group programs for people with disability weren't able to work, so a lot of people in isolation, a lot of people with mental illness ended up in hospital and are really struggling to get back to where they were pre-COVID. So we noticed that a lot in our group, in our community centre. Financially, we didn't do too bad because the government had quite a lot of incentives and was able to do some, tax rebates and those sort of things. But people with disability who live in group homes were in lockdown for months and months and months, much longer than the general population. And people weren't allowed to visit. Similar situation to nursing homes. In terms of bouncing back, yes, we have bounced back and we're doing okay. Mutual obligations is still an issue for us in that that really hasn't kicked back up properly, and there's been a change in policy direction from the government. So they've got a new Workforce Australia project that we don't know what impact that's going to have yet. And if work for the dole is not available, there'll be a lot of community programs that will really suffer.
Now, Bryony, COVID, of course, devastated netball at so many levels. So what were some of the biggest challenges, and what sort of shape is netball in now, especially at a grassroots level?
Yeah, it certainly had a massive impact on sport, just as it did in every other sector. And for us, the Suncorp Super Netball, they gave us 6 hours to pack our bags and move interstate. They closed our competition down on a national front. So it was a big thing for us to move our competition 2 years in a row. It's been affected. And that obviously has a back-on effect to memberships in our sport and ticket sales, and the opportunity to grow the game at grassroots level. So it certainly had a massive impact on our revenue, and we're just starting to pick that back up, obviously being able to play at home now. I think at the grassroots level, that's probably had the biggest impact in terms of the 14 to 7-year-old age group participation rates. We've actually seen a decline in people coming back to sport. They've had that 2 years off, whether or not it's just, they've just been content with not playing competition sport or participating in sport. And that dropout effect, I think, is a big issue facing us at the moment in terms of all sport, not just netball. And that's also going along with the volunteers. They've also seen a lack of volunteers coming back in, and that might be the age bracket that do normally come and help and are that backbone of sport that keep everything going. So, volunteers, and obviously the little kids have missed out on just learning basic skills. I think they've found that age group from 6 to 10 have been the ones that are now struggling because they haven't had 2 years of mixing with their friends and playing organised sport. So, yeah, along with netball, every sport's been affected, but hopefully we'll see that come back.
Now, I want to go to you now, Michelle. Transport is your specialty. That's going to be very interesting in a city like Sydney because we know how challenged it is regarding transport. Did Sydney handle transport in COVID? Have we learnt any lessons from it as well?
Well, looking back, I think we actually handled it quite well. We always like to make a lot of criticisms at the time, but no, I think our public transport services and the way they were conducted, the contingencies and the new forms of operation that were brought in order to help people protect themselves from catching COVID, the mask wearing, it took a while for those sorts of new measures to catch on, and there was a lot of debate at first, but once we knew what to do, then everybody, I think, went really well. The biggest and most interesting thing, though, with transport has been the rise of internet travel, if you like, or internet meetings. So I think it would be fair to say that a lot of us who are in white-collar jobs, we now do a lot more meetings online, and I think that has the potential to take a lot of pressure off both the road network and the public transport network. But there's also been other changes that have gone on because of that. So there's a lot more people, myself included. I now live in the Lithgow local government area in a little village called Hartley Vale. So I don't commute every day to UTS. I do a lot of that work online, but I might travel 1 or 2 days a week. And I think there's a lot more people that are perhaps doing that now. We've gone out further in order to take advantage of the lower prices for homes. Cost of living, of course, is an emerging and big issue. So it's part of that sort of change that has gone through. So for transport, COVID has been, well, what's the usual business? That seems to have coped very well, but there are also these very significant but subtle transformations that have gone on, so that I think is one of the...
That sounds like it's a work in progress too, that change.
Yeah.
The decentralisation especially is going to be a lot more of a long-term impact, isn't it?
But we don't know whether things are going to just slowly bounce back to where they were. They may very well, and in transport that's usually what happens, but we don't know. And a lot, I think, depends on what workplaces want to do and whether they're going to allow their staff to continue commuting and communicating in that way.
Yeah. Well, I can tell you the road network seemed to be back to normal today on the way here in the traffic jam that I was in, but that's something else. Shivane, you're a youth team coordinator. How do you think young people handle COVID, and how did youth services go?
Look, I think it was difficult for young people. It wasn't, the pandemic wasn't expected for anybody, so let alone a lockdown to the degree that was experienced. I believe during the first lockdown, services were really quick to respond. So a lot of youth services came together online and started to consult with young people and community and schools and so on. And we were really busy trying to convert all our face-to-face programs that we were doing with young people to online programs, which was difficult, and it was difficult to get young people to engage.
Online? So that surprises me. They love a screen often.
Yes, but it was difficult in the sense that young people had to do their online schooling as well, and online work. So the engagement sort of dropped off. A lot of services were also quick to consult and do consultations with young people about, what are the needs, what is it that families are needing within community, and a lot of the responses were similar from all services. I think, we've been to meetings with like 40 youth services that were all saying the same thing about access to devices, to laptops, to tablets. So there's a lot of areas within Western Sydney, low socioeconomic areas that parents could not just, run out and buy 6 or 7 laptops or tablets or credit for phones. So, if kids didn't have laptops, they were trying to use their phones. And you had some households with primary age kids and high school kids, some 6 to 7 kids in the home. So accessing those sorts of devices was really hard. Continuing schoolwork was really hard. We heard, I think, a lot about the difficulties that HSC students went through, date changes with exams, all that sort of stuff. So, but, the big one was obviously the financial issues that, prevented getting those devices and doing the work. And then you had parents also working from home. So one laptop for all those people in that household was difficult. Look, some of the challenges and that are still current today is the re-engagement back into school. So young people, the attendance is really low from some of the schools that we work with. Teachers are telling us that, we can't get young people to re-engage back into school because the norm is no longer the norm. And, if COVID breaks out in school, which is common a lot, we hear it probably weekly, COVID at a particular school. So kids then have to isolate again, back to online learning. So it's just that re-engaging that's been really challenging for schools, and schools are telling us all the time, but there isn't that specific service to go and support the family to understand what the core issues and why that young person isn't engaging.
So we've heard how some of the organisations have coped during COVID and what they might need post-COVID. We're actually going to delve into that as well a little bit later. Have we learnt the lessons from COVID though? Are we heading in the right direction? Let's put the blowtorch to the Mayor here. Mayor Bleasdale, is Council on the right track?
Look, I firmly believe that we're on the right track. I'm even more convinced that following the outcome of the federal elections, as everyone here tonight has seen, we have a solid, responsible plan for the next year, the next 4 years, the next 10 years, and really all under our overall 20-year plan. Our Blacktown 2041, our record budget, $809 million. First and foremost, locks in funding for our crucial services as a council, collecting the garbage, fixing the roads, maintaining the libraries, parks and playing fields. But our budget does even more than that. We'll spend another $284 million over the next 12 months on major capital works. Council is pumping up the local economy with major projects, as has been spoken about tonight, such as BEST, the $100 million sports medicine, training, research centre, high performance centre, and of course at the Blacktown International Sports Park. It's absolutely exciting what's happening in Blacktown City. Council's capital works programme will shape the city's future, there's no doubt, creating jobs, protecting the environment. We already have massive intent of massive further investment in Blacktown City. Our partnership with the Australian Catholic University who's here tonight, is growing every day. ACU, it's a wonderful university, and it's come to town, is going to be a key partner in the best development, which is the High Performance Centre. The sale of the Council Administration Centre site will enable us to ensure that the $1 billion private development of the Blacktown Brain and Spinal Institute in the CBD will actually happen. It's a reality. It's pretty much signed off, and so it's very exciting. And of course, this will pave the way for a new council, administrative centre, and cultural hub alongside ACU in the Warwick Lane site development. We have 3 major sites there that really will go to the market at a certain point. Our plans and policies will ensure that we meet and exceed our emissions reduction targets, reduce urban heat, climate change. It's a major, major issue for a council like Blacktown City. And we want to make sure that we protect our communities from toxic waste and things of that sort. So our plans, I believe, will guide and, of course, be sustainable growth, development of strategic centres. We have all kinds of other centres in Blacktown City, Mount Druitt, Riverston, Marsden Park, and the like, and adjoining suburbs. So these centres, there's no doubt, will secure major investment going forward. What does that mean? Creation of jobs, creation of opportunities, and of course with the university, education in the city is a major sort of thing. So we believe the centres will secure massive investment. And finally, I come to the change that gives me great confidence in the future of Blacktown City. For the past decade, Blacktown City has had limited support from the government in Canberra. Our local MPs, Michelle Rowland, a fantastic operator for the seat of Greenway, Head Husick, the member for Chifley, another great pioneer and hard worker for our communities, and Chris Bath. I must tell you, they've been absolutely tireless in seeking to represent and obtain sufficient funding from governments for all the important things that matter for our communities. And I believe the infrastructure, there's no doubt, has not kept pace in the last 10 years. So therefore, if we are to absorb another 10,000 people per year, we need to have that infrastructure, and they are the people who I believe can make things change. I believe for all these reasons, I'm now more than ever so confident that we're emerging from the pandemic. As you know, we had something like 98% vaccination rates in Blacktown, so we're pretty well organised as a mob. And I think more resilient, more sustainable. Going forward, I'm very, very excited, I must tell you.
Couldn't tell that you were excited at all, Mayor, but yes. There's some plans that you've just laid out for us there. I want to hear from the panel now, though. So what do our educators think, our community workers, our sports people, and what do they want from governments? Let's start with you, Paul Campbell. Has COVID changed ACU's plans? Has the election result changed your plans? What do you want from the Albanese government?
Yeah, I think it does impact our plans, but in a positive way. I think that the new government's support for the Uluru Statement of the Heart's a fantastic initiative that empowers the Indigenous people of Australia. So I think that's really fantastic. I think the new government taking steps to avoid COVID lockdowns and big disruptions to us all getting on with life and getting learning and business. I think that's really important. The new government has committed 20,000 new places for students to come to universities across Australia. We'll have to share those with the other 37 universities in Australia. But
how's that get divvied up?
It's all pretty complicated, but we'll get some of them, we expect, and so that's very positive. Our students want to get back to being on campus, and they have. We have, 70% of our classes are on campus, and the 30% that aren't on campus are sort of best suited for being online and those sorts of classes. So we recognise it's important for our staff and students to have that social connection for their well-being and to be successful at what they're doing. So they're the sort of things we're looking for.
Yeah. Now, Chris, if you could line up the Prime Minister, the Premier, the Mayor, well, the Mayor's here now, what would be your number one request?
Look, with the Mayor, he knows what we need. We talk to him all the time, and he's a great supporter of the community services in Blacktown. So local government not so much of a concern. State government, I think the biggest thing we would ask of the state government is to reconsider how it's managing advocacy for people with disabilities. We've been providing advocacy for 40 years this year, and our celebration, unfortunately, has to be the end of the 40 years. So the state government has decided to fund one large organisation to cover Western Sydney rather than the multiple small local services. So advocacy is a big one, and that's the platform for our service. We're a disability advocacy service. So, and not just for people with disabilities, people with mental illness, people who are disadvantaged, the people that just come through our door in the community centre, they all need advocacy. And there's not really anyone providing that except as part of another service. So it's not a direct, we're here to provide advocacy for that particular cohort. Commonwealth, I'm hoping that the new government will go back to their original ideas around the NDIS. We're hopeful that there will be a review of the NDIS, and there'll be a look at how the NDIS needs to change to make disability services sustainable. It's the profit margin is so tiny, so it's just about paying the person that's doing the work, and there's no consideration of what the business has to do to make sure that that person provides the work well. And the other thing, and I know you asked me for one thing, but I'm not very good at one thing.
When you get a chance to have a platform, go
that's
for it.
exactly right.
And we're coming into a state election year as well. So
Yes, well, that's true as well. The one thing that really gets on my nerves is that whenever there are funding rounds announced, it's always for new projects. There are hundreds of fantastic community projects out there that do a brilliant job and can't afford to close, can't afford to run. And getting funding for our existing project. We run an unfunded project that we have 151 people through the door a week. We provide 50 hot meals a day. We do 50 hampers a day. And I know we're a very small service compared to a lot of the others. It's all unfunded. It's all based.
How do you do it if it's unfunded?
We scrimp and save, and this year we've managed to fund half the project through small grants and lots of donations. But we're only one of many. I know that there's a whole lot of people out there running projects on work for the dole money, and if that's not sustainable, then there's going to be a lot of hungry people in New South Wales.
Now, Brian, I always have this argument with people that who think cricket's the biggest participation sport in Australia, but that's bunkum, it's netball, right? And I've always say to people, it's netball. Do you need more assistance? It sounds like you do, from what you were saying earlier, to get volunteers back, to get young kids back playing netball, to get more people through the netball door, I guess. So what do you need from government?
Yeah, I absolutely think that. I think sport is definitely on the way back, except for the weather at the moment. I think that's probably holding the sporting grounds back from participation. But for us, it's probably about the need for government to keep pushing the participation side of it and use the platform that local government have, that state government have, and the access to, there's ratepayers, obviously, that they've got access to, and directly getting in touch with them and championing on behalf of those. Every sporting, it's not just netball, it's, the gymnastics club, it's the swimming, it's the tennis, it's advocating for them because they probably now don't have that money to get out there and promote the sport. So I think from a local government, it's just promoting all sport. And we know that's not only, great platform to get physically active, but we also know that it's great for our mental health, and that will take, obviously, the need for services, if we get active and we get our mental health space right. So I think we just need to keep championing what sport is about and how good it is for, to keep kids active and busy off streets and stuff like that.
So a government investment in sport's a good investment.
Absolutely. And I think, championing that for everyone is important in all aspects sitting in this panel tonight. So, yeah, definitely important, and I'd love to see that state and national government still championing women's sport and investing equal amounts of money just as they do the men's sports as well.
We're getting there, slowly. A few good pay breakthroughs for women in sport. Michelle, I know in the past you've been a little bit scathing of the government in terms of transport planning. Are they getting better at it? I know council's got a wish list, but is Western Sydney in particular being serviced by the government's plan?
Well, I think the scathing comments in the past that have come from me have been about the degree of focus and attention that's been paid to inner city motorway development, especially when we know that inner city motorway development really doesn't work.
That's not the
very
Cross
well.
City Tunnel, is it?
No, there's quite a few of them, but the big development there and how it's relevant to Blacktown is that, of course, when you have large amounts of funding, state government funding being spent on motorway and associated road development in the inner city areas, it means that an area like Blacktown is not getting that funding. There's an opportunity cost, as we call it. And when we think about the growth that is expected in Blacktown, like it's extraordinary. We're sitting on 400,000 or thereabouts at the moment. In not so very long a time, in the blink of an eye, we'll be sitting on 600,000 people. And in order to make sure that those people all have access to the basic transport infrastructure that's needed to connect them to the existing networks and to future networks, there needs to be funding, and some of that funding needs to come from the state government. So one of the recent developments that's not come from the New South Wales government, but it has come from the opposition, has been a commitment by Chris Minns to, if elected, the Minns government will, a Minns state government will not spend or will not proceed with the Northern Harbour Tunnel and the Northern Beaches motorway. And there would be some people in those regions that would be quite relieved at that. I think you'll find there's an irony there. People in those areas would say, well, we need better public transport. That's what most of us say in most areas. But what it will also enable a Minns government to do is to start spending on the basic arterial road infrastructure that needs to be built in Blacktown. This is not an arguable point. It must go ahead, and state government has a responsibility to support Blacktown Council, given that the vast bulk of the population growth in Sydney is a lot of it is taking place here. And that's just the way it is. That's the basic facts of it. So state government funding needs to reflect that. So a federal government that tries to encourage a rapid, and I mean very rapid, uptake of electric vehicles, not just for passenger transport, not just the cars that we drive around in, but in freight and small delivery vehicles and what have you. We need that shift to electric vehicles to take place very quickly. And I think we're looking now at a federal government that is not going to say derogatory things about a technology that is wonderful.
Shivane, what do you want to tell governments? I mean, there's so many different arms to what you need for young people.
Look, we mentioned this before about kids re-engaging back into school, so that's a huge issue and a current issue. Youth unemployment is way too high, and I believe it's risen since COVID has began from like 5.5% to now 9.5%. So there's been a big rise in that. But the biggest issue and the priority at the moment is gang violence, and we've been hearing for a long time about the postcode gangs in Western Sydney, which is really concerning, considering we've had 3 deaths, and I think 1 death is too many. We had a death right here in Blacktown of a 17-year-old, another one near our service in Doonside, also 17 years old, I believe. And then the most recent one was a young boy at the Royal Easter Show, and, again, postcode related. So I think it's about trying to work in partnership in order to understand what these postcode issues really are. Working with young people, but working alongside police, community leaders, schools. And look, the youth services are ready to work in partnerships, and also with our local MPs as well. So that to us is a huge issue, is a huge priority, and I just think we just need a really massive coordinated approach in order to understand it all better and just understand how to work with young people around that. Some specific things that could assist would be like manned street workers. We do have street workers in Sydney, but I think more visual street workers in Blacktown would be fantastic. Mount Druitt, fantastic. And, there's been talk about some safe spaces as well. So I think they all sort of link, and it is really needed, because there is a lot of young people at risk and falling through the cracks. And I think if we don't understand what the core problems are, like the re-engaging into school, so a specific service there would be not holding the parents accountable for the young people not going to school, but having a service or workers to actually work with that family or work with that young person to understand why the young person isn't re-engaging. Is it mental health? Is it domestic and family violence? Is it financial? So, some specific services and long-term funding, not the short-term Band-Aid approach at all.
Yeah, it sounds like Chris is going through exactly the same thing. Look, it's been amazing to hear all of your thoughts. So thank you all for coming tonight and participating. I know we've heard a wide range of opinions on the best way forward for Western Sydney, and particularly for this region, for Blacktown. Mayor, have you learnt anything tonight, just to wrap up?
Well, look, tonight I want to congratulate everybody. They've made some very important points, and I think it really encapsulates a lot of the issues, a lot of the problems we have, whether it be transport, whether it be issues of facing young people, whether facing families, domestic violence. There's a whole range of issues impacting in Western Sydney. I'm concerned whether some of these politicians have been west of some of the politicians have been west of Parramatta, because certainly they don't seem to get it in terms of if they continue to release land without infrastructure, without the proper transport, without the proper hospitals, the schools, the education, we're going to end up with a city that really, we'll have the haves and we'll have the have-nots. And I think we're going down that path. And somewhere along the line, I believe the current new elected federal Labor government will be able to give us much more assistance, in my mind, in terms of dealing with some of these issues. But it has been a history of neglect by state and the former federal government in terms of how can Western Sydney have equity as compared to other parts of Sydney itself. There's got to be a recognition, and not only that, we are the economic heart of New South Wales. We have an economy of 24, 25 billion per year. It is a huge economy, so we need to create more job opportunities for those who are going to be coming into the city. Without federal, state government support, it's going to be a difficult task.
Well, thank you very much for organising this panel tonight, and thanks for inviting me here. It's been lovely to be here with all of you, and thanks to everybody for watching.